All right, we got to talk about, and you obviously talked about it earlier in the show, and and this has been kind of a big story the last few days. And this will lead right into our news segment, but we got to talk about Derek Minner and I already forgot the dude's first name.
Shyamalan, Nuremberg.
Shyamalan Nurdambieki.
Yeah.
And so this fight, I had money on Nurdambieki, so I was happy the way it ended, but I didn't know any of the back stuff. And so do you want to explain, or do you want me to? Because I know the story
Yeah.
pretty well.
Yeah, I know the story pretty well too. This fight
Okay.
is under some scrutiny for okay. There was a lot of late money that came in on Nerd and Becky in the betting. I think up to 3 hours before the fight, Nerd and Becky was the favorite, but he was only at minus 220. By the time the fight had happened, had started, he had swelled up to a minus 440 favorite.
I got him at 155.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was Saturday morning. So
Yeah.
that's how much it changed in one day, from 155 to 440.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was, that raised some eyebrows. And then the way the fight went, which we didn't talk about, Minner threw a couple of leg kicks with his left leg. He's fighting the southpaw, so his back leg. Then he threw a kick, and when he was planting on his back leg, he winced for like a half second. Like it wasn't like a major wince; it was a quick wince. But then he kicked a couple more times with that leg, which made it, kind of weird. Maybe it wasn't, maybe he was hurt, maybe he wasn't. But then all of a sudden Nerdembeka got him down, and Minner was not doing anything to defend on the ground, while Nerdembeka was landing elbows and punches, and it was stopped in 1:07. You couple that with all the late money coming in, it makes it sound like that. I can't say the fight was fixed, but there was definitely something going on. Maybe somebody had knowledge of a pre-existing injury for Minner and felt like he was not gonna go. But the strange thing too is not only did a lot of late money come in on Nerdembeka just to win, there was a lot of late money coming in on the fight going less than a round and a half, and a lot of money coming in on a first round knockout, which made it even more suspicious. We had the recent thing where the UFC banned fighters and everybody associated with fighters from betting, and Minner's head coach is James Krause, who they won't publicly say, but if you kind of know the story, James Krause was essentially the center of the UFC banning fighters from betting, because he was trying to get basically fighters caught up in a Ponzi scheme with offshore betting where he took a percentage of the money, but he took the fighters' money and bet on fights for them. The fighters didn't actually bet. Krause just took their money and made the bets for him. So, and he was a part of the ESPN MMA betting show, and he was a part from when it started, and then all of a sudden, a few weeks ago, sometime earlier, recently, he suddenly stopped being part of that show. So yeah, and he's openly talked about how he's made more money betting on fights than he has, fighting and coaching. So he definitely has insider information. Now, my personal feelings, I think Nerdembeka had nothing to do with the situation. I don't think the fight was fixed, but I think people took advantage, and probably people close to Minner. And UFC released a statement saying with their the people that they have who investigate the betting and stuff found no irregularities at this time, though. So it's kind of it's a story to keep an eye on.
Okay, so I'm gonna say something here that I don't know if this is controversial, or if maybe this is what everyone's already thinking, but if there's any way to determine that James Krause was behind putting money on Nurmagomedov, that guy should never be coaching again in MMA. Because this is exactly the kind of thing that UFC was trying to avoid when they asked for fighters to not be betting. If they can trace bets being made back to people that Krause talked to and said, you know what, my fighter's got an injury. It's probably not going to last very long. Put your money down on Nurmagomedov. If they can find any evidence of that, this guy's got to be gone. Like, you can't have that in a sport that is on national television
I mean,
and
he won't
pay-per-view.
he won't be banned from coaching, but he'll be banned. He'd be banned from getting licensed as a cornerman.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can coach, yeah, but he should not be. And really, like, if I'm a fighter, like, I don't want to have anything to do with that because, I mean, you know what? Like, you can't have your coach betting against you. I mean, it's the most basic of things. I mean, you go back to Pete Rose in baseball, you know, and the guy's still banned from for life. And I mean, and UFC, I can't see them banning someone for life. I mean, they could. I mean, and maybe you could even argue they should if this happened. But I mean, like I said, this is why, like, when when we talked about this a few weeks ago, and I said it's about time, and you know that because this was just something that was waiting to happen, and there's so many. They've got all these sponsorship deals with DraftKings and with all these different betting sites. You see the fighters, like, it feels like every second fighter, and especially the guys in the undercard, they're constantly talking about. There's this one you probably remember. I kind of glosses over me, but obviously they're sponsored by these different Fight Shark or something like that they're always talking.
Stake.com.
Stake.com, yeah. And they're just constantly talking about it because they're getting money from it. And those are the ones that are going to put the pressure on UFC because they want these fights to be on the up and up because, number one, they're going to lose money when, you know, all this money comes in on a fighter that's, you know, against a fighter that's injured. But then the other thing is people lose trust. And if people lose trust in this whole process, then they stop betting and then these companies don't make money. So when you've had your scandals, like when you had the referee point shaving scandal in the NBA, when you had the, you know, even going back to the White Sox, you know, and back in 1919, it's always been the gamblers and the books, the people that are taking the bets that notice the irregularities and point it out and are the ones that are putting pressure on the sports organizations to stop it. When you had your point shaving scandals in college basketball and in soccer and tennis even has had it. This is where, you know, and if these organizations want to continue making money from Bovada, from DraftKings, from whoever else, because make no mistake about it, they're making lots of money from DraftKings.
Yeah, like
You know,
$100 million a year.
yeah, I mean, it's crazy, and they're not going to be wanting to pay $100 million a year if they think that these fights are, you know, not on the level.
Yeah,
So this is a big story, and you want to keep an eye on this.
and not only that, even if the UFC is not involved, like when there's stuff coming out of was this fight fixed or not, that hurts. The UFC is licensed in each state, and it hurts the potential of getting licensed if all of a sudden it's like, well, you're having fights being fixed, even if they have no knowledge of it. That puts the UFC in a tough position. UFC
Yep.
is the UFC ever going to lose a license in any state? Highly doubt it, because the places they go, they bring in so much revenue for those athletic commissions. But it's a never say never situation, and you get the wrong person involved, things can escalate.
Well, and don't think that the DraftKings aren't also greasing the pockets of these commissions. You know, like, they all have a vested interest in each other. You know, the commissions are get the tax revenue from the shows. The states are getting the tax revenue from the betting probably. You know, like, there's a lot of money in this, and they can't be doing shit like this. Um, you know, I'm sorry, and you know, I'm sure some people made a lot of money. You know, for the lines to move like that, we're talking like seven figures that people were putting down on a prelim fight on you know, on a UFC show from the Apex. And those are the kind of fights you can usually get away with it in. But the problem here was that somebody noticed, and it was just a little too high profile. And I think they probably went a little too overboard in putting this money down and got a little greedy, and it could come back to bite them in the ass. So I don't think it's the last we're going to hear this. And maybe
I don't
we'll have
know.
one.
I mean, I don't know if it'll be the last we hear of this particular story, but it might be the last we hear of these kind of situations after this happens.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Hopefully, but I just mean this specific thing. Like, I think there's something to this. Lines don't move like that without a lot of money coming in, and I don't think it was a coincidence that the dude was hurt. I'm actually amazed this didn't happen with the TJ Dillashaw fight. Honestly, based on what we heard after the fact. Like when we heard that, like that was my immediate thought was like, did anything happen with betting? And no. So they really kept that close. And the fact that TJ's coach did and a James Krause coach fighter didn't, where there's smoke, there's fire. That's all I'm saying. You want to go into the rest of the news? Or you got anything else you want to say about this?
No.
Okay. UFC Seoul main event. We finally have one.
Well, it's not official, but being targeted as a Korean Zombie, Chan Sung Jung against Jiga Chikadze. It's not signed,
Oh,
but that's the targeted main event for that show.
that's a nice fight. That's a tough fight for the Korean Zombie, but it should be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Makhachev and Volkanovski. Don't tell me this fight's in jeopardy.
It's not in jeopardy, but the talk, right inside the cage after the fight was Makhachev saying he'll fight Volkanovski in Australia at UFC 284 in February. Suddenly, now that might not be the case. He's talking more about March in Vegas, and he's blaming the UFC for playing games about the fight. I don't buy that at all because there's two reasons you put a a pay-per-view show in Perth, Australia. Either Adesanya's headlining or Volkanovski's headlining.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously Volkanovski is the targeted guy for the main event for that show. And like I said, if Makhachev doesn't want to do it, it wouldn't surprise me that Volkanovski defends the featherweight title there instead.
Do you think is there a challenger ready? I guess it's pretty stacked division.
Josh Emmett, Arnold Allen,
Yeah.
Yair Rodriguez
Yeah.
is calling out Volkanovski over this.
So is this a money play for Makhachev, do you think?
I don't know why it'd be a money play. He's got a sugar daddy.
True.
So
I mean, maybe they want to get some of that money back from all the money they spent on the training.
No, it was none of his money that was spent.
Okay, so it's just basically just him. Like he never wants to fight more than like once or twice a year.
Sorry, so. That fight's not gonna happen in March in Vegas because that's gonna be John Jones.
Yeah,
John Jones. I mean, and they're not gonna put Makhachev in the co-main.
Yeah, no, that doesn't make sense at all. And we got Sean O'Malley wanting an interim title fight with who?
O'Malley is proposing an interim title fight against Marlon Vera. He's talking about.
Oh yeah,
O'Malley was talking about. We talked last week about Aljamain Sterling.
That's a fight that needs to happen, honestly, because the way the first one ended.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I mean, Aljamain Sterling is talking about not fighting until June. Obviously, they're not going to do an interim title fight. It's just something O'Malley brought up. I think he's trying to pressure Sterling into fighting sooner. I know they're not happy with Sterling wanting to take that much time off, so it's,
Well, you said that the next time we see O'Malley fight would be for a title. So, and you were thinking July. So, I mean, they could do that, or because if they're going to do this interim title fight, it would probably be earlier than that, and then you would do the title fight in July.
They're not going to. They're not going to do an interim title fight. It's be pointless to do. I think it's just posturing.
Okay.
Posturing, but and that was based on the fact I thought Sterling would fight again in February, March, and then fight Cejudo, and then the winner of that would fight O'Malley in July.
Oliveira and Fiziev.
Yeah, there was some random Twitter account that said Charles Oliveira and Rafael Fiziev were fighting at UFC 283 in Brazil. First off, on the thing, they got the date wrong. They put it January 22nd, and it's January 21st is the actual day. But it was, like I said, some random Twitter account called MMA Uncensored, and they credited it to Ariel Helwani reporting it. Except Ariel never reported that fight at all. So
Could
it
it
was
have been like
basically
one of those fake aerial accounts, maybe?
no, it's not a
Oh,
fake Ariel. It was, to me, I think it was a random Twitter account trying to break a fight, but blaming it, but crediting somebody else, and that way, if it was wrong, it's just like, hey, we didn't report this. Ariel reported it
and
for
then
you.
if
It's
it
kind
was
of bull,
right, they can say,
one of
"Oh
those
yeah,
bull.
we're the
It's
first
kind of
ones."
one of those bull, the
Yeah,
bullshit stuff that happens on
yeah.
Twitter. But anyway, that fight was never, as far as I know, it has never been proposed. Oliveira does not want to fight that soon. He wants to take a little more time off. But
Well, it's too
yeah,
bad. I mean, I would have liked to have seen Oliveira on that Brazil
yeah.
card, but
But the fact that it's being floated, that that could be a possibility for a fight later on in the year.
the next item, and this I got the media released just before we started recording, that Shane Burgos is out of his fight with Marlon Moraes at the PFL pay-per-view. And so now we're going to be seeing Shaman Moraes and Marlon Moraes, which I feel like we've seen that fight before. And was it UFC, or am I
No,
imagining it?
not in UFC. I think you're
Okay,
imagining it.
either that or it might have been. We might have saw that in PFL. But yeah, to talk about this, I'll look it up.
Shane Burgos injured out of the fight. It's supposed to be his PFL debut. They've been hyping him up as a major signing, and it is. I mean, they signed him to a big deal to get him away from the UFC. He's going to be a big part of the promotion next year, but he's going to have to wait to make his debut. And have they even said how much that pay per view is going to cost yet? I have not seen.
I mean, if it's more than like 25 cents, I'm not buying
Yeah,
it. And
yeah.
even if it's 25 cents, I'm probably not buying it.
It's funny,
Uh,
they've been hyping up this pay per view for months. We are in the month of November. It's happening in a few weeks, and we don't know how much this thing
like we
even
know it's on
costs.
ESPN Plus. I
Yeah.
mean that much we know. By the way, that fight did happen. It was August 1st, 2015, and I actually watched it. I'm sure I did.
World
It
Series
was
of
on the
Fighting,
under.
yeah.
It was it was on the under. It was World Series of Fighting. It was on the undercard of a fight I guarantee you saw. Rusimir Paul Harris and Jake Shields.
Nope.
And Clifford Starks and Mike Kyle was on that card too. Abubakar Nurmagomedov. Yeah, it was actually a pretty good card, but it was on NBC Sports on August 1st, 2015. That might have been one of those. Oh no, that it's August. Yeah, it wouldn't be one of the ones that were on a UFC weekend. But yeah, so that is a rematch from 7 years ago, and Marlon Moraes won that fight with a third round submission. And this one could go either way. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Um, but the that pay per view also will have Aspen Ladd and Julia Budd, as well as 6 world title fights. So I don't know, if like an 8 fight main card, or there's gonna be some
Seven.
prelims.
It's 7
Uh,
fight main card. They put Mariah on the prelim part.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, okay, that makes sense. All right, and last for the news. Lyoto Machida wants back in the UFC. I mean, if that happens, I mean, is he still under contract to Bellator, or is he a free agent?
He's a free agent now, 44 years old. He wants to return to the UFC for his retirement fight somewhere in Brazil.
I
So
mean, do you think he'd be ready in January, or are they looking for
I
maybe
think
later in the
I
year?
think I think so, but I don't see them signing, somebody to a one fight deal for a retirement fight.
Not even
Just
a Hall of Famer?
yeah, it doesn't fit the UFC motto.
Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, because you could just do him and Shogun,
Well,
and like,
Shogun's last fight is in Brazil. So
is it already booked?
yeah,
Oh, okay, okay. But I mean, you might sell some tickets. I mean, I don't know how the ticket. I guess they don't really need help selling tickets, though. That's the thing.
yeah,
These days, they're still on that sellout streak, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and we got a couple fight nights coming up, which will test that streak. But speaking of which,
Real quick, I wanted to something that I thought about after I sent you the rundown that I've been wanting to talk about. Have you
sure.
seen Yuri Prochazka's USADA test number?
Like how many times he's been tested?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 4, right? This year?
Jiri Prochazka,
Yeah.
no. He's
Oh.
been tested. He's been tested 51 times by USADA this year.
What?
51 times. The next most person who'd been tested was Misha Sirkunov 14 times. Prochazka's been tested
Even
50,
14, like what? What? Like
and we're talking about Prochazka, who's fought one time this year.
yeah.
The
How many
funny thing
times
is,
has Connor been tested again?
Connor's not in the pool.
Okay, but when he was in the pool?
Connor was one of the most tested fighters. So
No, sorry. How many times has John Jones been tested?
this year, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he's been
Who is
tested.
a fighter that never been tested? Like you were telling me this was a story a while ago. You were saying, well, I thought it was Connor.
We were talking about Connor, but we
Yeah.
found out a couple weeks ago that he's been out of the USADA pool for like a year.
Oh, okay. That's why he wasn't tested.
That's why
Okay.
he hasn't been tested.
I thought he was in the pool and then he just got pulled out. Okay,
No.
Sorry, my
No.
bad.
No.
But 51 times, like
51
every
times.
week, like
Okay.
basically they're testing him.
Yeah. 51 times. Not only 51 times, but he fought in June. So that was the second quarter. In the first 2 quarters, he was tested 9 times. So he's been tested 42 times since he beat Glover Teixeira.
What are they doing?
I don't know what the hell is going on there. I don't know if that's a misprint from what I read, but I was like
I
looking it
hope
up.
so. I mean, maybe it's
like,
maybe it's 15. Like if the
but
next
yeah,
highest is 14.
I checked it like right before
But even
because I don't know.
14 is like you would think like if you asked me like I would because I said 4. I would guess like most fighters are like there's no need to test people more than like once every 2 or 3 months.
No, you get tested twice if you're fighting. So if you're somebody
Okay.
who's fighting 4 times a year, you're gonna have a minimum of 8
Okay.
tests
Okay.
from the get go a year, and then you're probably gonna have a couple more. There's been guys who have been tested like active fighters have been tested like 20 times in a year.
I really hope we come back next week and you've like, oh yeah, I was wrong. It's not 51. It's
No, I
like
looked.
17.
I looked at.
No,
You can go
I
to,
know. Like I know. I'm sure your information is correct. I'm just hopefully the information that you saw was incorrect.
No, it's been like this. It's been like this for weeks. I heard about this.
Jeez.
I read this a couple weeks ago. And if you go to UFC.usada.org, you can look up every single fighter and how many times they've been tested.
So he might be like by the time we get to the end of the year, he could be at like 70.
Yeah, I mean he's fighting in December, so
Yeah,
I wonder if there's. It really kind of raises an eyebrow. You kind of wonder if there's something going on there.
like, if there's a reason why they keep testing him.
Yeah, there's maybe he talked about how he went into seclusion with no electricity and only stuff like water and natural food for like 2 months here recently. Maybe that USADA guy had a tent out there and it was just staying there to test him just to make sure nothing was.
Every time he goes out for a glass of water, here, take a piss.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. We got some fights, and I see a few names on here that I'm going to be excited about.
Yeah. One of them, UFC Fight Night, December 17th, Alex Caceres against Julian Erosa.
Bruce Leroy and Juicy J.
Yeah, so there's that one.
And Tafon's on that card, too.
Tafon Chukwi against Vitor Petrino.
Yep.
And just a couple other. There's no big fights that right now. It's just a lot of.
Just that one was the one I was excited about.
UFC 283 in Brazil. Warley Alves, Nicholas Dalby, Jalton Almeida against Shamil Abdurakhimov, Thiago Moises against Guram Kutaladze, and the South Korea show, Tatsuro Taira, the big flyweight prospect against Jesus Aguilar, and nothing. UFC
Loma Lukbunmi is an interesting prospect.
Yeah, and other one I want to point out, UFC Fight Night, February 18th, Gerald Meerschaert against Abus Magomedov.
Is he any Magomedov? Is that a guy like we need to pay attention to?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember.
And Parker Porter and Justin Tafa. Is that the Australia show?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that would explain why. And Joshua Kulabio and Melsik Bagdajarian. Kulabio is an Australian fighter as well, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, Parker Porter and Justin Tafa. That should be a lot of fun. Two guys that are going to have a hard time. They would be cutting to make 265.
Tafa definitely.
Yeah, Porter's a pretty big boy too. All right, so I think that's going to do it.